Good morning, I am Arturo Interisano. I am a physicist and after having worked in the field of quantum mechanics for some years and having been also in the Ministry of Defense in fields related to the military airplanes, I am been working in Thales Alenia Space Italy, so in the field of aerospace, since 15 years. Even if I had started my scientific career more at an academic level in a strong research field like the one of structure of the matter and the quantum mechanics, the experience in the military Italian Air Force has opened, in a sense, my mind toward also engineering problematics. And it was so for me not difficult to be open-minded and to try to work and to research also in a more engineering field like the one of the space. In particular, I am involved in the engineering of the space platform, the bus. So everything, the means on which you put the payload by which you make your mission. The payload can be an optical sensor and a radar, but to be powered, to be managed, it needs a bus, and a bus which has to be maneuvered, which has to fly on a specific orbit, which has to be balanced in terms of power and mass in order to cope with the overall mission. And this is my job basically in the avionics. In my company I'm an avionics expert. So whatever concern the attitude, orbit, navigation and control, software producing inside the onboard computer, electrical power subsystem dimensioning and design, and flight dynamics, orbital control, and so on. It's a very broad matter. I have been lucky because I have followed the space system, for example the Cosmos Skymed, from the very beginning up to the end, up to the mission control. So I have had the opportunity to see in detail all the phases, from the preliminary phases to the procurement of the elements, to design and production of the software, to the balancing of the various subsystems at platform levels, and also at integration and testing and validation level, up to the launch, the onboard maintenance, the on-orbit testing, the support to the ground system, and so on. So it has been a very broad experience, which has been also extremely grateful also to understand what a space system can be, even if I have basically exercised this experience in the Earth observation, so a radar system, and in the telecommunication system, so geostationary satellites. So I have worked for the RADARSAT-2, the Cosmos Skymed, partly also for the ESA satellites Sentinels, the SICRAL satellites, and Athena Fidus, which is a joint, as well as SICRAL-2, a joint collaboration with France, with Thales France, because it's also a military system, which is a French-Italian. So there has been also an opportunity to see two different approaches in the satellite engineering, the one from the French and the one from the Italian. At present, I have a new role, which is also satellite product line manager for the domain observation of my company. So in a sense, I have to define and to study the product line roadmaps for our satellite in the Earth observation, to understand which are the user requirements overall, and to focus also on the design which this platform must have, giving a look now, and this is the novelty for me, also to the commercial and the economic aspect of this subject. What I have seen in this year is that there is a continuous evolution, not only on my experience and my personal knowledge, but also in the way in which the space discipline evolves and is perceived all over the world, not only about its final target, but also in the way it must be put in place, for example, now also at commercial level, because we have seen for years the space as a clear domain for big institutions like NASA, for example, big agencies. Every country has in the space has its own agency. So something whose role was strictly linked also to governmental or international rules. Now there is a change in the paradigm, in the sense that now the space is also perceived, at least for what concerns Earth observation and telecommunication, as a fundamental player for telecommunication, broadband diffusion, for example, of information on the Earth, Earth disaster monitoring, Earth planning, for example, for agriculture or for the meteorology. So, in a globalized view, the increase of the space segment role is becoming more and more, let me say, also commercial in perspective, and the number of players also in the in countries which are gathering more and more importance. I'm speaking about China or India. It is fundamental to stay in a new perspective and to open the mind also in a new commercial world. The major changes will be in this commercial perspective, in the sense that having more actors, also in manned flight, as we have seen, for example, with the Virgin Galactic, also in the need to control more from the space what is happening on our planet in terms of air traffic control, for example, or monitoring for industrial and agricultural needs, and also military control. As we have seen, the military scenario is required a more widespread control in areas where proximity is not so easy as probably in the past, and requires also to gather information from different parts of the globe. So what I'm seeing is that the human community itself is seeing the space as a practical mean, not only as a widespread pusher for a long-term mission toward the profound space, I mean Mars, which was the basis. The space era started with those, pushing towards an answer technology. And now we are seeing really in something which is embedded in the economy of a country, or in the strategy of the economics of a country, the space, not only something which pushes the scientific research like in the past, like it was for decades. Space exploration, I think is something really embedded in the mankind, because starting from our exit from Africa, I mean the first man, we are pushed towards searching other territories, other countries, other resources. Now the globe is mainly occupied. We are many and many. This natural push-up is seeing other perspective, and the first one are the Moon and Mars again. Is strange that the Moon appears more in the past than in the future. Is very surprisingly. It seems that we have never we behave like if we never have been there, but in a sense we are simply trying a new energy, new ways for reaching this target, and the interest of Mars is for sure an interest over new resources, like also the interest in asteroids, which are perceived from many agencies as mines for new materials, for example. So beyond the specific research interest in the comets, there is also a pragmatic search for new materials which are limited in our restricted planet, and for sure must be searched abroad in the neighboring of our solar system. Manned mission in this game of going abroad are for sure the major interest, because apart from our enhancing capabilities in robotics, it seems that the man present and the man control is in any case fundamental, as is fundamental the possibility to understand if we can colonize another planet which is more familiar to the Earth. Probably Mars is this planet. So it is important to push in this direction, and the major constraint now is the problem of radiation that the human body has to face up during this long trip. The possibility to find a more efficient way of propel this space mission, like for example electrical propulsion, because we are in any case speaking of many months of transfer, and many months means also the capability to return. I have heard about a mission which is only single way, and sincerely it could be optimized. And yes, I see more of this bet in the material research, in the capability to optimize material hardening towards radiation, IV ions, and the very harsh environment that the spacecraft, but also obviously also the human body would face in that context. Much research have to be devoted towards this discipline, and much research has to be devoted also in the optic to reduce mass instead of increasing mass. For sure, big launchers have to be produced in the sense that one of the major experiences is to send the man and a lot of means to stabilize the colony in Mars, and this means a big mass to be launched in space, and it is not easy at all considering our present state of the art in terms of launchers. Technology. When a man started with agriculture, that was technology. As we were in the past pushed to leave Africa and to colonize other countries, in the similar way we have a sort of a colonization of our knowledge through technology since the beginning. It's intrinsically in human DNA, I think. When I listen to people speaking about problems of the technology, for me it is not possible to divide this concept from nature itself. Our nature is based on improvement of technology. Since the beginning is our way in which is the way in which the human mankind Darwinistically has evolved in thousands of years. So, okay, we are evolving toward new technology, and probably it will be like that also then, also in the future. I don't see, I suppose that in any case, human mankind has gathered some positive and beneficial effect from this. So I don't see how this trend that can have up and down, obviously in the ways in which some technology can be used, for example in weapons, it is also natural, can change, but technology itself, which means also, it goes with also with knowledge, cannot be in principle blocked, at least that we force our natural way of considering the man, and sincerely I think that it's quite difficult for that. I am not optimistic or pessimistic. What I say that it seems that at least in the last 3 centuries from the Illuministic age, there was a big improvement in the way in which the man has behaved inside not only his perspective in the world, but also in the way in which he behaves towards other people, towards civilization has transformed. I don't see that in these 3 centuries we have got a worse situation with respect to the previous years. This does not mean that everything must be in principle a vertical line toward a continuous progression. The history itself has demonstrated that it is not like so. For example, I am a very big fan of the ancient Greek civilization. That in the after, let me speak about the medieval age, for example, has had a drawback, a collapse. So I think that the Greek past civilization was a very high peak of civilization, and then it collapsed or has assumed other forms like a Roman civilization that collapsed also. And so there are, I am from Italy, so Vico was a theoretical for this, in the sense that there are courses and counter courses on this. So I don't see, not nor optimistically, never pessimistically this. I have a perception of the nature and of the man in continuous change, much more oriental in this. That is, for sure, we change continuously. There is nothing which is standard, blocked, fixed, not only for the man, but in the nature itself. It is a continuous transformation. And transformation is not optimistic or pessimistic. I don't put this kind of consideration. Transformation. The advice is, because the world is a continuous transformation, they have to take experience from the older people, from the older engineers, for example, but being open-minded, seeing continuously new ways of seeing society, nature, life. So the physics itself, yes, we speak about laws, but they are not frozen at all, they are only pictures. So please transform these pictures, be creative, be open-minded, even if it's not easy, because it never occurred in the history, so fast change in technology, in way of thinking, in the way of positioning the mankind in the universe, like in the past 2 centuries. So it's very surprising. I understand that a young person is not facilitated in understanding where it is, knowing the past, and also projecting in the future. New generation can become mad thinking in this kind of subjects, but probably they are also in the position of understanding that things are not frozen, as religions say, are not frozen as many scientists say, but there is a continuous evolution, and our role is to ride this evolution, to understand, to change, to transform, to be part of this transformation in an open way, in an open-minded sense.